read somewhere that EVE Online solo is like nightmare difficulty. And while I don't disagree with that, it definitely is a challenge, but also very rewarding. It also kind of just depends on what your goals are as a solo player. My goals, I feel like, are pretty crazy in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish. But anyway, welcome back for another solo mining episode. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about difficulties in solo operating in EVE Online. Probably touch a little bit on transport. So I don't think I've really talked a whole lot on the logistics side of solo mining, or more in context to what I do kind of overall. But that is the goal today. Let's see what's on D-Scan right now. Some deep cores, some Agila, probably doing rat sites. The most important thing I can tell anybody is if you're mining in the high sec, the first thing I do is check for pirate strongholds. But we're clear today, and I am still kind of focusing on Veldspar for the most part, because I think the goal is going to just kind of transport all this stuff over to nullsec. Let's get these rats down real quick. They're still pretty far out. See if the yeah, they're gonna go. Now, transporting your ore, we're just gonna kind of cover transport and logistics kind of first. But transferring your ore really is going to depend. You have a lot of options in that field, and it's really going to depend on like your skill points, how long you've been playing, and also how far away you are from your destination. When I first started playing, I essentially used a Miasmos, and I haven't used a Miasmos in probably several years. But it's a Galante industrial ship that is specialized in carrying ore. It's pretty fast. You can get it. Its line time pretty good. Let's go here to the attributes and everything. Mining hold capacity is 54,000 cubic meters. So it's a little bit more than if you would fly a Mackinaw back to Jeddah and everything. And this is a great starter transport ship just for getting stuff to market if that's your goal. So I think what we'll do is I'll kind of show you guys how I would kind of fit this. The biggest problem with the Miasmos is it's a known target. What I mean by that is if you're taking stuff to Jeddah or really any trade hub, they're going to be definitely looking out for Miasmoses, because it, almost certainly contains ore. Now, the important thing with the Miasmos is basically just a line time. You want to try to get to where you're going as fast as possible. So, since it's a Galante ship, having 4 lowers is really nice. You can just kind of go crazy and go inert stabs all on the bottom here. That'll bring you down to a 6-second align time, which is not bad. Obviously, there's some diminishing returns here, as you can see. Once you kind of hit 3, the 4th one really isn't all that great. The other thing you can do here, instead of that 4th one, you could either go in overdrive. That'll take it from 172 to 194 meters a second, which is nice. You could also throw a warp core stabilizer on it, just in case, especially if you're transporting stuff out of low sec and things like that. The warp core stab will just kind of help you get away, which isn't a bad thing here. Now we can go over here and we're going to look at rigs as well, so we can actually get our line time down even further with a engine housing. If we wanted to, we could also just get more cargo space for things that are not ore. That's an option you have as well. I tend to try to go like Tech 1 on this kind of stuff because you probably will lose a few of these. Right now, our cost is like 5 million or so, but like I said, it really is going to just depend on what your goals are. So let's go ahead and fit the mids. We have no EM resistance on this ship, and in most cases, when people are targeting players, especially industrialists, then they're going to be focusing on EM damage, and that's really going to be like the hole that we want to fill. So if you add one of these Tech 2 amps, it'll take you up to 34, 2 is 54, and then 3 is 60. You could go all the way here if you wanted to, but I would probably only go like the 3 just to try to like pump that a little bit. You could also take that 4th slot and fill in for thermal right here, because thermal is also a little low. That brings it up to 47. But I think just to have like a nicely well-rounded resistance profile, 2 EMs and a thermal, probably pretty good. Prop mods are good to have just to kind of, not so much in high sec, because we don't really have to necessarily worry about bubbles. Now, if you're transporting stuff out of low sec, you definitely want a prop mod to help you get out of those bubbles. But for the use case for this, for high sec, going from basically high sec to high sec, staying in that area, I don't really think, you know, a prop mod is necessarily really worth it. And there's not really anything else worthwhile you can even put on here. So you can choose to add more amps if you want, or whatever the case may be. So let's see, what will I do? You can go, we'll just go, I don't know, I'm just really big on EM amps on this kind of stuff, so I think we'll just add another one of that. And then I do like having that thermal a little bit higher, so, and this would be just like a passive, right? If somebody does like try to like target you, one shot you, whatever, you're giving yourself a little bit of a pad here. And then we can further kind of get this a little bit better by doing rigs as well. But you could also go defense field extenders, or whatever the case may be. Defense field extenders, that's really going to kind of help your overall HP and also your recharge. But we can also kind of just go with EM shield reinforcer and things like that. So let's go EM shield reinforcer there, and then we can do, let's see, let's do a kinetic. And then we're still a little low on thermal, so we'll go and add another thermal. So we're at 67, 64, 61, and our explosive is a little low too. But this is a lot better than what it was just bare. And we're only up to like 22 million. So you want to definitely, if you're using this to haul ore, you want to get that Galante hauler skill as high as possible, because that's really kind of where that volume comes from. So the roll bonus, or the Galante hauler bonus, you're going to get the 10% on that mining hold for every level. So try to go for level 5 on that stuff. That's going to help you out quite a bit. Let's get our lasers turned back on here. But this is a really good option. I think it probably, when we get a little bit more ore to kind of justify filling this up, we'll probably go grab one of these, and I can kind of show you how I kind of go from point A to point B. As far as the high slots here, I mean, there's nothing really worth putting there at all. But let's go ahead and save this just so we can kind of reference it back later. But I thought about this the other day, because it's like I just randomly thought about the Miasmos and haven't really ever used it in many years. The other option is a crane. I don't know if I have my crane fit on here or not. Yes, it is. This is another option too if you have a little bit more skills. Obviously a lot less than 54,000 cubic meters, 12,000 cubic meters if you have the expanded cargo holds in here. But this ship can't be cargo scanned, so there's no way for people to know kind of what's in it. And also that 12,000 can be anything. It can be ore, it could be PI, any of that stuff. Actually, this is one of my go-to ships for PI over the ethanol and stuff. Yeah, it holds less, but it's quicker to warp. It's quicker warp speed, and it also has covert ops. So if you do get kind of like stuck in a spot where you can't necessarily dock or whatever, and you're kind of hanging out at a pause in space, you can kind of just cloak up and do things that way. This is also really good for just gating. I would use this if I was traveling around nullsec, taking things to a system and then to a keep star for export. But if I really need to remove anything bulk for export in nullsec, I'm just using a jump freighter. And if I'm actually moving anything to low sec, I just use a jump freighter. So basically you just undock a jump freighter from JITA and then jump to your low sec system and do it that way. But a lot of the transport logistics stuff I'll be talking about in this episode is going to be in terms of just gating actual items from point A to point B. So Miasmos is a great starter logistics ship. You can, I would still recommend every industrialist get into the crane or like the blockade runner, because it's just really good. It's a really good train. You're not going to regret putting your time investment into that. And then beyond that, we also have the option, and what I've done recently is I just mine in the Mackinaw until I have essentially enough compressed ore to fill up the 44,000 cubic meters, and then I just fly the Mackinaw to wherever I need to go and do it that way. Because in most cases, someone sees a Mackinaw, they're probably not as motivated. Like if you put a Mackinaw and a Miasmos on a gate next to each other, chances are people are going to want to target that Miasmos first because it has lower tank, it has lower EHP. It's going to be quicker for them to actually pop, even with triggering Concord. So this might actually warp slower. This might actually take a little bit longer to go from point A to point B, and it'll hold less ore, but it's a little bit more tanky in comparison to those entry level industrial ships. So other than that, that's pretty much my recommendations. If you're, I would say, I don't know how many people watching this are very, very new to mining or are still working on building the infrastructure, but I don't think I ever really talked about the Miasmos at all. And instead of doing like a dedicated fit video, because it's a very basic fit, so the idea is very basic, instead of doing a dedicated thing like that, I just figured I'd cover it here. Other than that, my day-to-day Eve is pretty routine for the most part. I mean, like I said in previous videos, once you kind of figure out your operations, your day-to-day doesn't really change a whole lot. A lot of what I do actually is theory craft. I'm always looking at more ways for a solo player, especially like a single character in the solo context, to make the most per day, and then like extrapolate that over the course of a month, and then kind of figure out best ways to kind of earn ISK by not committing too many characters to an operation. Now, we're going to talk a lot about the difficulties and kind of the hurdles that you have to kind of go over when you're playing Eve as a solo player. Mainly playing Eve as a solo player doesn't mean you're not playing in fleets or doing roams, but I would say this would apply to most people who are in between fleets or roams or group activities, are doing pretty much everything by themselves. And in terms of solo mining, I don't necessarily if I'm like manufacturing or building something, I try to do most of everything myself. A good term that corresponds to this is called vertical integration. Essentially, vertical integration is a methodology of like a manufacturing company owning more than one step in a manufacturing process. A lot of what I do is vertically integrated. So what that means, let's look at it in terms of like building a venture, essentially. So the way that I structure it as a solo player is I will mine the ore, I will research the BPOs, I will refine the ore, I will run the job, I will handle logistics, and I'll handle distribution or selling. So I'm handling every step in the process. Now, if you weren't vertically integrated, say you're acquiring your ore through market orders. So you're buying the ore, and maybe somebody else is manufacturing that stuff, and they're handling the cost, and then, you know, upcharging you for whatever their service is. And then maybe you're paying somebody else to, you know, take those produced items to market, and then you at the back end sell it to either sell or buy orders. You know, you'd be basically in charge of, you know, whatever you decided to commit to. I try to limit and simplify my my manufacturing process as best as I can. And also, a lot of the enjoyment for me playing solo is doing everything I can possibly do on my own, because that's the most rewarding in my mind. So in terms of the manufacturing we'll be doing on this channel, all that stuff, all that ore, if we do reactions, we'll go out there and make those fuel blocks. We'll go out there and mine the moon ore. There's not going to, and by solo, I mean, I guess I'm saying I'm extremely solo, like extreme mode, because I'm not necessarily going to go and acquire a PI or ore or ice, you know, and then fit that into my pipeline. If I have to have PI or if I have to have ice, I'm going out and I'm doing that. So that is a very challenging way to approach pretty much anything in this game, because especially as a solo player, and this is more evident in like PI, for instance. Now, I could take all of my characters, all of them, to nullsec. I could set them all up on PI, and I could make a killing. Technically, I am solo because I'm one heartbeat. I might have like 5 accounts all doing PI in nullsec, but I'm trying to... my biggest experiment these days is actually doing things as a single character. That's what I've been thinking about a lot of the past few days, is figuring out how to make, you know, a certain amount of ISK per month with a single character on PI, and a lot of it has to do with you only having 6 planets and figuring out how all that works, because mostly everything that's worth selling or exporting from PI has multiple different steps. Like, for instance, nanite repair paste. Nanite repair paste, if you run a 30-day job on a BPO, then you're looking at, you know, about 6 billion on that, right? Now, it might take you the entire month to get all the PI to run that job, and on 6 planets it's impossible, right? But if you actually look further out, let's say like for 1 month all I do is produce the nanites that go into it. So in 1 month I produce 90,000 nanites, then the next month I'll produce all the gel matrix biopaste, and then the next month all the data ships. That's one way you could do it. You'd still only get like 6 billion out of that. So like constantly I'm looking at ways to like scale. Eventually I think I will probably commit more characters to PI. I do think that there's a pretty low ceiling in terms of what can be done on a single character, but I would say a good thing to aim for on a solo character is probably like 1 billion a week, and that's doing minimal mining, minimal PI. If you're playing a lot more than that and you can commit more characters to your operation, then it scales pretty nicely. So we'll see a lot of that too. I'm just trying to figure out, like, what I would like to do is I would like to actually get my PI back up and running to where I can essentially produce all 15 P1s, because P1 is king. If you have a setup where you have like 3 characters and they all have a dedicated planet to one of the P1s, then, and you're just stockpiling that stuff, then you could essentially have a 4th character. Their 6 planets is essentially just process planets. You have this, now you have this like stockpile of all this P1, and you can essentially do whatever you want with it. And a lot of the things I've been like kind of kicking around in my mind too is like, yeah, I run mechanical parts right now, so I have a 25 factory process planet that does nothing but produce mechanical parts. Now it's actually more efficient for that planet to just, you know, to keep that planet and just change the factories based on whatever I'm doing, maybe for like a week or a couple weeks. So if you have all that P1 stockpiled and you're like, well, I don't really need mechanical parts, I need this other P1, or you need a couple of different P2s, you could take your process planet and you can just reconfigure all of those on that character, and just for a time just completely change what you're doing as long as you have the P1 base always coming in. So that's a lot of what my nullsec character is doing right now. This character, as you guys probably know, is focusing just on mining. That's all she does. She's capable of actually running. She's a fully trained PI tune. I would love to actually put PI up for her. I think it's just not really worth it in high sec at the scale that I want to operate. And right now I really am just focusing on, basically she's the trit farmer. So everything that we do, let's go ahead and we need to go empty our ship here. All the manufacturing we're going to be doing in nullsec is going to require quite a bit of trit. So if her only goal in life is to just mine Veldspar and ship it out, we'll do pretty good. And once I get ready to actually export this to nullsec, I'll kind of cover the cost and everything that goes into and how much I'm actually able to ship out. We'll probably end up actually shipping close to 150 to 200,000 cubic meters of compressed Veldspar out. That way we're going to get to the point where we can basically mine for a month and then ship everything, and then we don't necessarily have to do another shipment to null for another month. So we'll mine for a month, and then we'll send ourselves a month's supply of trit, and then we'll have an entire month after that while we're running through that null to build up the next shipment. That's the goal. It is a little time consuming for the most part, as far as it takes like 20 minutes for me to fill up the Mackinaw, which I wish it was faster. I really do, but it's just not. And I think that it's still pretty good. Every trip out, so I make probably about roughly 5.7 to 6 million per trip, so per 20 minutes. And that's as expected. That's a pretty good rate. I could be doing a lot more. I haven't been doing a whole lot of mining. Maybe 3 to 5 trips a day. And also that comes a lot from just having tunes in different areas that I'm also doing things on. So, nullsec, we're focusing a lot on PI and ratting, and kind of getting positioned to do manufacturing, invention, reactions, and exploration. A lot more to be done in nullsec than necessarily here in high sec. And then also, more recently, like a couple days ago, I started another character, not an account, but I started another character on an account who is going to be essentially a dedicated low sec miner. So the process of actually doing that is not going to be too different from how this character operates. Now, whenever I start a new character, I essentially start it and then I'll run it through all the career agents, because that's just XP or SP that we want to help kind of get those base skills going. Her focus on skills is essentially going to be a lot of survivability stuff. So we want mechanics, we want hull upgrade, we want shield upgrade, but then also we want the engineering stuff for her as well, so we can fit a really efficient build or fit on a ship. So we're talking CPU management, we're talking power grid upgrades, all that kind of stuff. Now, initially we're going to send her to low sec with a venture, with because a venture is really, really difficult to catch if you're paying attention, because we're essentially going to be running a venture with a warp core stabilizer 2. The only opposition we really will have is just dealing with the rats in those situations, but I'd rather have the ability to get out of a potential loss of a ship rather than worry too much about the rats. I think eventually we'll probably put her into an endurance once she gets a little bit further down and a little bit more trained up. But starting a new character is definitely a long-term kind of thing, right? So that low sec stuff is probably not going to happen for a few weeks, but starting them now and getting the initial 5 million skill points kind of added as a base is how we're kind of planning, helping plan for the future. It'll take a while though. It'll take a good amount of time to get her kind of maxed out to 5. login rewards and stuff like that help. Like I said, the career missions help kind of get that character moving. And then also, if you start a new account, it's actually even easier because you can just use a referral link and then, you know, expedite, you know, 1,000,000 skill points. Then you only have to really worry about training the remaining 4. I'm trying to get into position here so we can actually have more access to more Veldspar. I try to stay on the outside of this arc because it just allows me to get away if I have to. Let's do another D-scan. Still a bunch of diamond miners, NPC miners. Somebody left a couple of wasp out there. It's been pretty quiet. This is literally just my second trip out today, so I want at least 4 targets, so I don't have to like double laze 2 targets, but most of the Veldspar is over here in this corner. But I would say, yeah, it's back whenever I would primarily do fleet mining with my corporation, it was very, very easy, right? We'd go out there, we'd mine, and then at the end of that op, we'd get paid out, or we could do buybacks or whatever the case may be, which was great. You know, we got to socialize, all that stuff. It wasn't necessarily challenging. It was just like, you know, showing up, like you were just basically a number for the fleet. You were just really there for the strip miners, not necessarily for, you know, necessity. I think that's what makes playing solo so appealing to me, is I can kind of just, I can plan, I have control over what I want to do every day. Back then we were basically locked in. Every day we had a mining op, you know. Once you get that mining op done, then whatever, you can go do whatever you want. But those mining ops would take up the vast majority of the playtime that I was allowed, or that I wanted to do. You know, most of the time after those fleets, I was just done, you know, overstimulated, whatever. But when I started playing solo, and I was like, I can just, if I don't feel like mining today, I don't have to. And that's a lot. You'll see a lot of that in the nullsec stuff that I do. Is some days we'll be just doing a bunch of exploration, and then other days it's like, nope, don't feel like it. Let's do some mining or ratting, or we're just gonna sit here and fly a station and manage PI. I probably spend a lot of time managing PI more than anything in EVE right now, because it's just a really good passive way to kind of just continually earn without necessarily risking a whole lot. And that's a lot of what I do too as a solo player, and what everybody should be doing is risk management. And really what that comes down to is, yes, I could go out there for 3 hours a day, I can mine Mercoxis, I can make a killing. The thing about it is, while that income is good, by putting a Procurer or a Skiff or a Mackinaw or whatever ship out in space, and while you're mining, you're assuming a certain level of risk. Now, that risk can come in the form of a hot drop. Somebody could come in and drop a whole fleet on you, and you could lose your ship. Or what's more common actually is getting a carrier or a dread or a Titan rat that spawns, which essentially you can get away from that stuff if you're paying attention. But until somebody comes and kills that rat, then it's just going to keep following people around the system, which can be obnoxious. That's, you know, you're assuming risk by going out there and doing that activity. I think that's why PI is very appealing to me, is because it has very good, I earn ISK while I'm not even logged on, or if I'm working on another character. The amount of time I spend in space is very minimal, right? I will go out there, it takes me maybe like 2 or 3 minutes to go and move stuff around. And a trick with PI and managing, if you're in a station, Citadel, you can actually hit the view outside button. And if you view outside, then you can access your customs office, and you can, you know, drag stuff from the customs office storage into like the launch pad, and vice versa. So, for instance, in a situation where the P1 planets, maybe their launch pad is full, I can just view outside, I'm still docked, and I can drag everything out of the launch pad into the 35,000 cubic meter storage in the customs office, and then that planet can just keep on going. You can also reset your extractors while still being docked and everything. That's why I love PI so much, is because it has probably the lowest assumed risk than anything in the game. And if you build it all out correctly, like right now on my single character out there in nullsec, I'm doing like 120, 150 million a day just from the PI that's being produced, and that has me in space for 3 minutes a day. That's pretty good. Now obviously if we added a second or a third or a fourth or even a fifth tune to that, it all scales, right? Then now you're potentially making, 3 or even 600 million a day, and then you're less than 20 minutes in space to maintain that. And that's just something that I really enjoy about it. And then also on top of all that, Project Discovery. I know a lot of people gripe about Project Discovery, and yeah, it's tedious, it's boring, but when you're out here just like watching, progress bars or whatever, and you're doing that Project Discovery, it adds up. I used to do Project Discovery on all my tunes every single day, so I would be making 100 million a day just on Project Discovery, which adds up over the course of a month. Now it's just kind of like, if I'm logged into a character and I'm doing something and I'm kind of waiting, then yeah, I'll do a few submissions here and there, because I've got so much other stuff going on and everything. Getting more of that Feldspar. The other thing I'll probably be showing here once kind of research is done is we're going to be making some shuttles. And you're like, why would you make shuttles? There's a good reason. Shuttles are very interesting because they require essentially just trit. And we can mine a lot of Feldspar in high sec. Now, the thing is, the value of the material going into one shuttle is about 11, we'll say 12,000 ISK. And then our profits, we can sell probably for 19 to 20. So just a little under like doubling our value. Now, obviously, there's another issue here, is we're taking basically what's 27.8 cubic meters in volume, and we're transforming it to 500 cubic meters. That's the big problem too, is you have to, even if you can double your ISK, if you're quadrupling the volume, that's a logistical issue that you have to figure out, right? Which is why most people be like, yeah, just sell the compressed ore, it's better, because do you know how long it would take to carry 1 million cubic meters of shuttles to market? The thing is, shuttles are very interesting after updates several years ago. It used to be that interceptors were immune to bubbles. Now they've taken that passive immunity away, and you get that through the interdiction nullifier mod. What they did do is they gave shuttles the ability to be passively immune to bubbles. So a lot of people use shuttles to get from like high sec to where they're operating in null sec, because if they come across a gate bubble or a warp bubble of any kind, they can just pass right through it. Now, if you're making a lot of shuttles in volume and you do your research and good avenues that people are, a lot of popular avenues people are taking to nullsec, you can essentially position your market orders in basically the high sec connection before it bleeds into low sec, and eventually a few jumps bleeds into null sec. You can kind of scatter these shuttle buy orders around, and then you can actually upcharge for a convenience fee. So if people are like, I need to get this character out to null, I can pod fly to that high sec system, buy that shuttle that's on the market there, and then fly the rest of the way. I've had a lot of success in doing that. And obviously, like, depending on where you're operating in high sec and how far you want to travel to kind of place these orders, it's all like time management as well, right? It just, your mileage is going to vary on your success rate for that. I tend to try to like look at the different region gates, going to each of the different nullsec regions and then try to position my shuttle by orders to the closest high sec system to the region gate, which is pretty, I guess, a pretty niche thing, but not really uncommon. There, I do have a little bit of competition in terms of what other buy orders and things like that. But that's just something else to kind of think about. And this character is still actually training like laboratory operations, so eventually we're going to try to get her up to the point where she can run max jobs. And so we'll after we're done like kind of feeding nullsec trit, then we might just, you know, end up running like 10 shuttle BPOs and just making like 2,000 shuttles a month, or actually more than that. It'd be like 5,000. Yeah, it'd probably be like a little over 5,000 shuttles a month, and just offloading them. And that's gonna be purely for just the fun of manufacturing, right? The amount of trick going into all those would be, you make your profits a lot faster by just selling the ore. But I think it would just be kind of something interesting to do. It's like, we're just gonna make 5,000 shuttles and see how long it takes to offload them. All right, we're kind of slowly moving around this belt a little bit. I think someone's already been here, because a lot of this trit's in weird spots. I'm actually gonna run a scan here and see. It's, I guess it's Big Rock Day, so we're not doing too bad with everything. I did mess with my UI a couple days ago, so some of these windows are still kind of overlapping a bit. But that's another thing too, is like if you're running a bunch of characters, just having your UI match helps a lot too. This character is essentially probably the base of my UI across everybody. So if I wanted to make changes to my UI, I essentially just modified this one and then copy it over to everybody else. The only exception really is the nullsec tune, which will still get the same kind of format, but we have to make considerations for Intel channel, so that when I'm recording videos up there, I can still see Intel, and it's just not like publicly visible. But that's pretty much the only thing. And my main actually hasn't had its UI updated in probably several years, because it just doesn't undock JITA. It just kind of hangs out and trains. I'm essentially, the goal for that tune is to just train everything. I have Omega out to like 10 years on that tune. I think my Omega on my main expires in like 2037 or something. So that tune just kind of hangs out with improved implants, and just its job is to just train everything. And a lot of that is useful for the channel overall, because it's like, if I ever decide that I need to do like a fit video for a certain ship, or I need to showcase a certain new feature that had, you know, prerequisites, then I have at least one tune that is highly trained to facilitate that. Bump bump. And I don't know if anybody has ever wondered why I don't actually play my main. It's like, I have 130 million SP character that I don't actually use. The big reason is because the name of my main is the same name as my channel, and locator agents are a thing. So that's really the main reason why I don't use it. And also, I just, you know, decided a long time ago that I wanted that tune just to be the jack of all trades and just train all the things, whereas all my other tunes are essentially kind of purpose built for what they're currently doing. This character actually was originally a Sino alt back when I was doing a lot of carrier ratting and Oracle drone mining and things like that. So she has a really strong base in just Sino, so she can fly Falcon. Also PI, she ended up being, essentially back in the day, she was basically like, if I needed a Sino, that's who she was. Other than that, she was doing PI. And then eventually she became a miner, So I would, you know, start trailing her behind the Rorqual in a Hulk, and then now she started going on the path of like becoming the Orca pilot, doing the Orca solo drone mining, and all the stuff you kind of seen in this series. And then the Nullsec tune was actually a purpose-built tune. That was the original tune that actually was doing my solo alpha project series. She used to be just strictly an alpha, and then she transitioned to like faction warfare stuff, and then I ended up dumping a ton of skill injectors into her. She's at like 60. I want to say she's at like 68 million, which is kind of funny. She has the same amount of SP that my main did like 2 years ago, and she is significantly younger. But the purpose for that was just like being able to do things that I love to do in Nullsec without actually putting my main in Nullsec. She can pretty much do all the important things that my main can do, with the exception of flying Golem, Marauder, and probably a little bit more repros skills and stuff like that. So that's a lot of her focus right now. She's working on invention skills, a lot of production skills, and also kind of just splicing in the Marauder stuff. This tune is just not really focused, working on some industry stuff. Her repros skills are already pretty good. She can use every crystal. Actually, I think both of them, the Nullsec and this tune, can use every crystal. But eventually, one of them is going to have level 5 in almost every reprocessing skill, so that our average is the best it can possibly be when we start sending all this ore out there to Nullsec to use, because we want to have the most bang for our buck. When we reprocess ore, we want to get the most minerals that we can out of it, just to kind of min-max the whole process the best way we can. Alright, we're going to have to reposition. Actually, no, we're in range of 1. I don't know if we have enough ore in this rock to fill up. But even though solo mining is very, very difficult in EVE, like I said earlier in the video, it is challenging, but it's also rewarding. Now, there's been days where I've like on my main, I can just literally just do volume. I can buy a bunch of stuff at volume on the market and then hold it and then flip it. So my main used to be, for a long time, before I actually really started doing EVE content, my main would just kind of sit in Jita, train like it does now, but I would be basically just day trading, or not day trading, but long-term market trading. So I'd buy, you know, $1 billion or $2 billion worth of a certain item, and then I would just hold and log that price I paid, and then come back in like 3 months and, you know, compare notes to the current market and offload what I needed to do. Made a substantial amount of money that way, but I haven't really done any market trading. As far as like the whole like solo player becoming a trillionaire goal, that's like a 2-year goal for me, but I think it'll probably get done in less time than that. The reason is because I hold a lot of my net worth value in Plex. Now, when I started playing 3 years ago, you could buy Plex for $2 million. Plex prices have essentially gone more than double in value since I started playing. If that trend continues, then really my target would be like, you know, 500 billion. And, you know, if that trend continues, even at a 50% increase, I could still get really close to my goal just by having been invested in the majority of my assets being invested in Plex. It can go the opposite way, obviously. You know, Plex prices could dip and I could just, you know, lose a bunch, but I don't necessarily like holding raw ISK, because ISK value today is gonna, like, 1 ISK today is still only gonna be worth 1 ISK in 10 years, right? So that's my biggest thing. Is I usually like I kind of hold just raw ISK around in case I need to buy a ship or buy mods or do something crazy. But once my character or my overall, you know, ISK gets to around 10 billion, I usually just convert. Actually, I usually wait till like 12 billion, and then I just basically convert 10 of it, and then I always just kind of keep 2 bill on hand for whatever I might need it for. Alright, I think we're pretty much done here. Let's cut these. Yeah, we're done. Gonna go ahead and head back here. But hopefully you guys learned something in this episode. I know there's a lot of things to cover in terms of like operating solo, even with multiple different characters in different regions of space doing different things and how it all kind of fits together. But I'm going to do my best in this series to kind of explain a lot of the methodology and a lot of the thought process behind how I do things. And also, if I find something new and exciting and, you know, lucrative, I'll try to share that with you as well. And I'm always on the lookout for that kind of stuff to hopefully make everyone space rich. But thank you guys for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.